bad news, this is the worst news. Toxic heavy metals are not combustible, do not degrade, and cannot be destroyed. They accumulate in the local environment after leaving Stericycle's smokestack, and then they accumulate in the bodies of everyone along the Wasatch Front. They have been implicated in a range of emotional and behavioral problems in children, including autism, dyslexia, attention deficit disorder, learning disabilities, delinquency, and in adults, dementia, depression, and Parkinson's disease. Increased rates of autism and learning disabilities have been found around sites that release mercury into the environment, like coal-fired power plants and incinerators. Let me remind you that Utah has the highest rates of autism in the nation, double the national average. That fact alone should compel our state leaders to deal with every possible contributor to this public health disaster. Sources of heavy metal pollution should be first on that list. A study by a branch of the National Academy of Sciences revealed that persistent air pollutants such as dioxins, furans, mercury can be dispersed over large regions well beyond local areas and even the countries from which these sources emanate, meaning that Stericycle is far from an issue that affects only its immediate neighbors. Many of the testimonials that we received in the last 4 or 5 days after this event was people throughout the Wasatch Front, especially throughout the Salt Lake Valley, could smell a distinct chemical smell that they had never smelled before and was distinguished from the typical lake odor that we're all familiar with. That certainly is consistent with the studies that suggest incinerator pollution is distributed literally for hundreds of miles. Incinerators do not eliminate hazardous substances. They concentrate them, redistribute them, and even create new ones like dioxins. In addition to dioxins, they emit chlorine, mercury, arsenic, lead, cadmium, ammonia, benzene, and they spread that miles from the smokestack, eventually inhaled by local residents or swallowed when they eat the vegetables from their own garden or their children play on their own backyard swing set. Dioxins are likely the most toxic man-made substance known after plutonium. Many of these chemicals are both toxic and bioaccumulative, building up over time in the body insidiously, with the risk of chronic effects from even very low continuous exposure. For multiple physiologic and biologic reasons, children and fetuses are at significantly increased risks from many of these incinerator emissions. One example is illustrative of the point. Many of these HAPs concentrate in humans, including human breast milk. A nursing infant may consume 10 to 50 times as much dioxin as the average adult. No risk assessment about Stericycle has paid any attention to whether or not their dioxin emissions are causing human breast milk in Utah's mothers to be unsafe. A detailed report on the health consequences of waste incinerators can be found to the press. We give you a website where you can go into it in more detail. It makes for great bedtime reading. Any incinerator would represent a serious risk to the public health in our community. We have captured on video a Stericycle bypass event that occurred on Friday. As dramatic and intuitively dangerous as this seems, it better serves a larger point. Any incinerator has startups and shutdowns and other, quote, events that result in bypass of pollution control equipment on a regular basis. In fact, quote, pollution events as severe as was captured by this video may not even represent a permit violation. That shows how absolutely out of control this situation has become. Studies at other incinerators show that bypass may be occurring 10% of the time. Dioxins produced during startups can be twice as much as the annual dioxin emissions under steady state conditions. Spot monitoring, as is done by the DAQ, has been shown to be grossly inadequate and likely underestimates the actual dioxin and heavy metal emissions by 30 to 50 times. The best managed incinerator would still be a community health hazard. But this facility is anything but best managed. In layman's terms, the DAQ has caught Stericycle falsifying their records, intentionally loading the incinerator with material that does not represent their normal feedstock in order to pass their emissions test, in other words, cheating. And they have found Stericycle to be emitting hundreds of times more dioxins and furans than their permit allows. And in parentheses, let me add, public health protection would demand that they not be allowed to emit any. We were told that this facility is now under criminal investigation at the state and federal level. An email from July 12th, which I have given a copy to members of the press, obtained by grandma request from a DAQ employee to another DAQ employee, where they discuss comments made by a former Stericycle employee and a current Stericycle manager. The comments are that they are concerned that Stericycle is pushing the current manager to, quote, push the limits of the plant. Further, the comment is made that the manager had recently gotten a huge raise and promotion, and that, quote, as a result, they are now demanding more and more of him. The manager is complaining that, quote, he is under a lot of pressure from his managers to feed more and more waste through the plant, and that the plant can't handle what they want it to do, end of quote. Hospitals and clinics are not innocent bystanders in this drama. They should realize that as centers of healthcare, healing, and well-being, it is ironic and indefensible for them to dispose of their waste in a manner that harms community health. The Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment will be sending a letter to every hospital in the 8 states that currently submit waste to this facility, including the high-profile ones in Utah, like IHC. We will be asking them to suspend their waste shipments and seek cleaner alternative waste management options in their areas. The EPA is not an innocent bystander. An appeal of Stericycle's Title V permit was filed by Green Action, another group that is standing with us, and other citizens back in 2009. It has been on the EPA's desk for 4 years, and it has yet to be acted on. And so we ask the EPA, just what will it take for them to revoke this permit? Thank you.